You are listening to the Spactastic Mysteries podcast. We are continuing Anna Gale Lyne's second novel in the Jaguar and Peacock series, Without Clearance. Colonel Jessa Masters, a fearless and seasoned federal agent for the Intergalactic Intelligence Bureau, IIB, commands the SpaceVessel Liberty with unparalleled precision. Alongside her partner and husband, Nate Masters, a skilled investigator with a sharp intellect, she has faced some of the galaxy's most dangerous criminals. But nothing could prepare them for their next mission, a personal one. When a fellow federal agent is found brutally murdered aboard the Liberty, the crime scene is not just a professional setback, it's a chilling threat that hits too close to home. As Jessa and Nate dig deeper, they uncover clues that suggest this murder is no random act of violence. It's part of a decades-old vendetta, a sinister plot aimed at dismantling Jessa's entire family. Without Clearance is a high-stakes, action-packed space thriller filled with twists, conspiracies, and a powerful tale of love and loyalty in the face of overwhelming danger. This is episode 10, What Blinks? If you have not subscribed, do so now, and hit the bell to be notified of new episodes.
The corridor leading to the mess hall was unusually quiet I glanced at my watch, 1,140 hours. I was supposed to meet Nate in the mess hall for lunch. I couldn't wait to hear what Alexis Sebastian had said when he spoke with her. I wondered if he found out anything useful. Alexis was probably trained not to say anything during questioning, but Nate was highly skilled at cracking even the most hardened suspect. Originally, he and I were supposed to interview her together. At the last moment, Dr. Manning summoned me to the infirmary. Joey had taken a vomiting Remy there. Upon further inspection, which took Dr. Manning all of 5 minutes, he diagnosed it as a stomach virus and cautioned, "The rest of your family will probably come down with symptoms within 48 hours. I continued down the corridor, nodding and waving as people marched by. I hastened my step. Nate was expecting me at 1,145 hours, and I didn't want to be late. Suddenly, a hand covered my mouth. Slender fingers spread over it to prevent me from screaming. I felt the person thrust something into the small of my back, then dragged me into a nearby utility closet. My heart and pulse raced, and so did my mind. This was obviously one of the Solomos family's members or associates. But which one, Acacia Solomos or Maria Damian, or someone else altogether? I scanned the room, searching for ways of escape. When I found none, I realized that I only had one choice. The person removed the object from my back. Seconds later, I felt a cold, metal instrument touch my neck. A knife, I suspected. It was not the first time I had a knife fixed at my neck, and it probably would not be the last. I glanced down to confirm my suspicions. The slender fingers now posed a knife to my jugular. My mind flashed on another time when I had a knife to my neck. I looked around. I was in a corridor. From the blue lights that flashed J6 at the end of the hall, I knew it was corridor Juliet 6. Not a single person passed by. How odd, I thought. With hundreds of people aboard, most corridors had multitudes of crew members passing through them every moment of the day. A husky, feminine voice whispered, "Give me what I want, or I'll kill you." "What is it you want?" I asked her. Why hadn't she covered my mouth? My blood pounded in my throat. Sickening waves of nausea attacked my stomach. "You know what I want, the drugs you stole from me," the voice answered in a tone so frigid that it made an Alaskan winter feel like an Indian summer. "Give me what I want, and I won't kill you," I heard the same husky voice command right next to my ear. An edge of impatience in it. She raised her head, emitting a maniacal cackle. "Thanks to Great-Grandma Laura," she continued, "I will kill you, just not right now." Her voice woke me up to the severity of my current reality. Instinctively, I grabbed the woman's arm, turning into it. Then I flipped her onto the ground and seized the knife. Looking down at my attacker, I recognized her from her photo: small-built, red hair, black eyes, the mole, the scars on her nose and eye. Alexis Sebastian. I sighed deeply. Before I could grab her, she pushed herself off the ground and took off like a horse out of the starting gate. I ran after her. She darted down the corridor, turning the corner and raced down another one. I followed her. I pressed my thumb to my comlet, murmuring into it, "Major Vincent, this is Colonel Masters, I am pursuing a suspect. She is headed down corridor Charlie 8. She bolted down another corridor, then another and yet another. Each time, I was hot on her heel. Evidently, Alexis Sebastian wasn't familiar with the Charlie level because she headed face first into a dead end. While she moved her head from side to side, trying to find a way out, I pounced on her. She kicked and screamed, but I managed to wrestle her to the ground. I pinned her down by sitting on her back. Reaching into the pocket of my flight coveralls, I produced my handcuffs. After bending her arms behind her, I slapped them on her tiny wrists. I waited for Colin to arrive to take her to a holding cell. Afterward, I hopped on the nearest travel tram and rode it to the mess hall. Upon entering the mess hall, I spied Nate glancing up at the entrance every few seconds, then down at his timepiece from our usual table in the corner. He was probably beginning to worry. Scratch that, he had already started worrying and had probably worried himself into a frenzy, thinking about all the possible things that could have happened to me: accidents, the Solomos killing me, contracting an illness. I was never late. I prided myself on arriving at exactly the moment the event was scheduled to begin. 5 minutes early and I would appear anxious. 5 minutes late and it would look as if I didn't care. And neither were the impressions I wanted to send to my staff or anyone else, for that matter. I hurried to the table, running my fingers through my hair. It must be a mess after the morning I had. "Sorry I am late," I apologized, dropping into the seat across from him. I was detained by Alexis Sebastian. Nate raised his black eyebrows questioningly, placing my hand in his. "Did she hurt you?" "I was on my way to meet you." I was walking down Charlie 6 when a hand covered my face and forced me into a supply closet. I started, activating the large quan pad in the center of the table. I scrolled through the menu. I had a craving for a ham and Swiss cheese sandwich. "Have you ordered yet?" "I am famished." "How can you think about eating at a time like this? From what I gather, your life was just threatened." I shrugged, peering up at Nate through my eyelashes. My stomach was feeling a bit queasy this morning, so I only had a few slices of toast and juice. My eyes returned to the menu. "I hope I am not getting that virus that Remy has." "What happened with Alexis Sebastian?" Nate prompted, removing his hand from mine. He leaned back in his chair, lifting it off the ground so that only 2 legs met the floor. He folded his arms across his chest. He stared at me as if I were a suspect he were interrogating. I intertwined my fingers and peered directly into his eyes. They held a bit of impatience mixed with a lot of concern. "She put a knife to my throat," I advised him, pushed my hair back and fingered the long scar on the side of my neck. Apparently this wasn't the first time either, because I remembered another instance where she put a knife to my throat. In the memory, she told me to give her what she wanted. I leaned forward, looking around me as if trying to catch an eavesdropping little sister, then focused on him. "She accused me of stealing her drugs." "What happened this time?" "She basically said the same thing, except this time she added that thanks to my great-grandma Laura, she would kill me anyway, just not right now, so I let my voice trail off." I closed my eyes briefly, picking up my napkin. I shook it out and folded it across my lap. I flipped her, but then she escaped. I chased her through many corridors before I overtook her and cuffed her. Nate put his chair down on all fours, touching my hand that lingered on my scar. He brought it back down to the table. "You know, I am sure that Dr. Manning could remove that," he noted, gesturing toward the scar, "if that's what you want." I shook my head. As much as I despise my father and all the abuse he put me through, I want to keep it to remind myself of all I have endured, to remind myself of what it cost me to pursue my dream. "I knew you would say that." Nate lifted my hand up to his lips and kissed it. "Especially now that you have stood up to him." He quickly let go of my hand, looking quite embarrassed. "I forgot you don't remember standing up to him, but it was certainly a sight to see. That's a good reason why we need to beat the clock and solve this case," so I can remember. Okay, but let's have lunch first. He turned his attention to the already activated Quan pad. Have you decided what you want to eat? I covered my now roaring stomach with my hand, letting go of Nate's. I have a craving for a ham and Swiss cheese sandwich. If I didn't know better, I'd say you were pregnant with your cravings and your queasy stomach. After he punched in 2 ham and Swiss cheese sandwiches and 2 colas, he folded his hands under his chin. Probably psychosomatic symptoms, I responded. I gave him a nervous smile. It wasn't a comment directly about Abigail, but close enough. And I still didn't want to talk about what happened. I was still trying to process it myself. There would be plenty of time to discuss her later. Right now, we had the mystery of my missing memory and the missing drugs to solve. Nate leaned across the table, cradling my face with his hands, brushing his lips against mine. 1 kiss turned into 2 kisses and 2 into 3 and 4. When our lips parted, I just watched him for a moment. How did I possibly find true love twice and in the same family? Nate knew me better than anyone ever could, even, regretfully, Ben. Nate and I were partners, and there was a bond, a closeness between partners that was closer than that between husband and wife, akin more to the bond between buddies who had served side by side during the hostile fire of a war. The drugs are in a place you would never think. They are shoved in something that blinks, ran through my head. Brooklyn Curzon's note says that the drugs are shoved in something that blinks. What blinks besides people? What blinks? A clock, lights from a spacecraft, a star. How about this? I simplified, rubbing my shoulders. What on this vessel blinks? Lights. You know, the ones that blink at the end of the hallways, Nate remarked as the waiter arrived with a tray of sandwiches and tall glasses of cola. He transferred the glasses and plates from the tray to the table. After the waiter was out of earshot, we lifted the privacy wall. I unwrapped my sandwich, putting it to my mouth. You may have something there. I bit into my sandwich. Oh. The ham and cheese melted in my mouth. That hit the spot. That's the last place I would expect, just like Brooklyn Curzon's note said. Let's try J6 first. Why J6? Nate inquired, swallowing a bite of his sandwich. Well, I started, inwardly smiling at how well Nate and I worked together. Once Nate realized I was an asset instead of a liability to him, that is. In that memory flashback I had of her holding a knife to my throat, I noticed that I was standing in corridor Juliet 6, thus J6. Okay then, Nate agreed, lifting his cola to his lips. Looking over his glass at me, he added, that's where we'll start. I continued to eat my sandwich, watching the people coming and going from the mess hall. Most sat with their friends and co-workers, eating and catching up on the happenings of their lives. I worked with many of them on previous missions and vessels. Outside of work, they didn't seek me out or wish to associate with me. I surmised from the way they acted around me that I intimidated them. Rumors floated around the Liberty that I had ice in my veins instead of blood, that I ate nails for dinner, and that at night, I turned into a werewolf. I couldn't believe that the most intelligent minds in the Freedom Alliance, who could do calculations in their head, perform brilliant surgeries and do wonders with broken engineering equipment, could accept such dribble as the truth. I didn't mind that the crew seemed intimidated by me. If they got too close, they might discover my secret, that I was a federal agent. The less people who knew that piece of information, the better. Anyone who did know it could suffer the same fate as Brooklyn Curzon. When we were finished, we headed toward corridor J6.